Today is day 4. We're almost at the end of the week for our 10-day live challenge. So I just want to thank you for joining me today. Today, we're discussing how to create policies and procedures for your organization. This is still a big question. It comes up quite often. And I know it's because it is a lengthy document to put together. And for those of you who are putting them together for your non medical home care agencies, it is a licensing requirement. So I know this is why I continue to get this as a question. So hopefully, I can give you some tips today to get you started in the right direction. So, guys, before we jump into what we're discussing, just as a reminder, I have created 2 checklists for you guys, and that's just to help you in your business journey. Both are absolutely free, so they're at no cost to you. I've created one for those of you starting your non medical home care agencies, and of course, a general one. And those are that's for those of you who are um, starting your businesses. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I had one for both. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump in today's content. And today, again, we're discussing creating your policies and procedures for your organization. Now, I will tell you this just to kind of have a jumping point. Your policies and procedures are going to be done slowly but surely over time. So, I remember when I first completed mine, I want to say it was like a little over 60 pages. I was so proud of myself for getting this document put together because it really was that kind of gives to a little bit of fear, a little bit of anxiety to make sure that you're putting together the right document. And so I want to dispel that a little bit for you with these 3 tips. These 3 tips are going to help you attack it aggressively, but with the understanding that, hey, it's going to be one topic at a time until you create your document. The end. And what I mean by that is what do they need to know? And what they need to know should be relative to your industry. So I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. If you're running a non-medical home care agency, we definitely want to discuss safety precautions, right? Because we're taking care of people in their homes. How do we do that in a safe manner? We certainly don't want to hurt the patient. We don't want to injure ourselves. And we want to make sure that everything we do, we have safety in mind. So, safety is something that's going to be spelled out in your policies and procedures. Confidentiality policies. So, again, whatever's going on with that patient, as in terms of you even being there, you providing care, in terms of their condition, their diagnosis, it is a small world. You can be discussing something with a friend and, at a grocery store or something like that, and that patient's cousin is in the line next to you, and just that easy, you could breach confidentiality. So, really making sure that we have confidentiality policies that are represented in your policy and procedure handbook. Thirdly, elder abuse. What does your employee do if they suspect that the client that they're taking care of is being abused? We certainly don't want to accuse anybody of anything, but being in the industry that we serve, we are reporters. If we're of knowledge of something, then we have to report those things. So how do your health aides report that? What does that look like? What agency do they contact? Do they contact you first? So see, these are things that need to be in your policies and procedures. So another example I have, what if you're running a nail salon? Let's go to the other side of it, right? What if you're running a nail salon? Well, you may want to define your tip policy, right? You have some nail salons I've noticed when you come in, they only accept cash tips. Then some will allow you to add them to, like if you're paying with a debit card or a Visa card. Okay, so if you're for me, if I was a nail technician, I would want to know. So how does that tip work? I have heard that sometimes at the end of the day, all the tips are pulled and they're distributed evenly. I've also heard that, hey, if you earned a tip, then the tip is 100% yours. I've heard sometimes you've got to pay the house some of that tip. So, whatever it may be, that should be spelled out. You want that technician coming into your organization knowing what your process is on tips. Something that would have to be big, of course, is sanitization and sterilization of the tools that are used, because if going from a nail salon, if they're reusing tools, those can lead to some gnarly infections, right? So that's something that you would want to call out in your policies and procedures. How do we sterilize these tools? How often? For how long? What products are you using to do these things? And then, of course, how much product is being used per service? That's something you want to make sure that anyone who's supporting your nail salon knows. So again, I just wanted to give two different examples, but that's specifically what I mean by jump to the end. Whatever your business is, whatever organization you're in, you want to kind of think in your mind, hey, when I, create my policies and procedures, what do I want my employees to know? What do they need to know? And that's a perfect segue to my second tip, which is what are the needs to knows and the nice to haves of your industry? Because there are going to be certain things that are industry specific that are tagged by your industry. Okay. So this is important. This is definitely where I reiterate how important it is to know who the regulating authority is for your industry. Okay. A quick Google search will reveal websites where there will be tons of information for you. So, depending on your industry, there will be need to knows. Now, I love using the non medical home care agency as examples because I know that's where the majority of you know me, but I love the information that they have set aside for us. So, for example, when you go over to their applications instructions, when you go over to their personnel policies and procedures, they call out two items. Now, I just told you a moment ago that my policies and procedures was a little over 60 pages. Of those 60 pages, there were two things that had to be in there: abuse reporting and hiring practices. So, of course, other things were mentioned, right? But for them, they wanted to have those two things that had to be a part of the policies and procedures that had to be in there in order for it to be satisfactory for the state. But I love the note that they put at the end. And this is important to anyone, regardless of the business that you run. And I'm going to read this because this is real important. Other federal and state agencies have requirements that businesses must adhere to in relation to personnel policies. This includes minimum wages and fair employment practices. So these agencies monitor businesses, they monitor their compliance with those laws. So even though the state is not looking for or enforcing those agencies, it's still important as a home care organization owner that these agencies adhere to those business practices and make sure that whatever business practices you adopt, they're not in conflict with those laws. So see, we have to juggle as business owners, we have to juggle what does the government say about, your business, state agencies, and of course, those regulatory authorities that are within those state agencies. We can't be in conflict with those things by running our business. So it's important to know. That's why I always say, make sure you know, because we can't, as business owners, we really can't say, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know this was something that I had to do. Well, you can say that, but good luck with that working. Okay. So that's the second tip. The second tip is making sure that we know what the need to knows are and the nice to haves. Now, a nice to have is maybe something that makes you specific, that makes you unique in your industry. So those are things that you may want to know. I will go back to the nail salon for a moment for this. They have to stay on top of trends, you know. I just recently started getting my nails done again. That's probably why I'm talking about this. Because through the pandemic, I didn't go to get my nails done at all. And so I noticed there were so many new options that I had for that I could have to have my nails done, because I get my natural nails done. I don't get acrylic done, but I'm going too far into that. My point is, so with those different products, there's processes along with that. You have to learn how to do those types of styles, right? And then we still have to call to mind the processes that go behind the scenes in order for that salon to offer those nail selections to you. So again, that with any update, with any product update, with any product change, those changes should be reflected in your policies and procedures. So as you can imagine, you may have more than one version, right? You may have to have an addendum. So, for instance, I think on day one, when I was doing the 10 days live, someone asked me, "Hey, what are some changes? What's changing in California?" So, if you already have a policies and procedures, and I think I called out, "Hey, I know there's been a change to some of the COVID laws as it relates to home health care." If you already had a policy and procedure, then you would just need to update that to reflect the new COVID changes. When that happens, that will give you a second version of your policies and procedures. If you already have employees that receive the first set of policies and procedures, then you just need to provide them an addendum. That addendum spells out that change. As you onboard new employees, you would give them that second version of your policies and procedures. I hope that makes sense. But this is your policies and procedures is going to be a fluid document. It's constantly going to be evolving. Okay. Okay. The third and final tip that I have for you is to create a framework to build on. So, when I say create a framework, if you kind of think of a skeleton or a shell, so the shell are the topics, the sections, if you will. And then the meat, the flesh of the document, are those processes and corresponds to those sections. Okay. So I usually like to start now. So I've seen it both ways. I've seen someone have their handbook acknowledgments at the front of the policy and procedure manual, and then I've seen it at the end. Either way, you want to make sure that you have a handbook acknowledgement. Why? Because people will always say, I didn't know. I didn't know you wanted me to do that. Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to do that. Oh, no one ever told me, right? We've all heard all of these things. You may have said these things because truly you didn't know. So, by you having some type of process to ensure that the handbook is reviewed and that review is acknowledged, is a book that's you have to do that. Because then you can show, you can illustrate, well, all of my new employees are, receive the handbook. We go through some of those key items. There's some items that they're asked to go over on their own, and I have them acknowledge that they received it. Okay. But then you want to start with your sections. So, section one, that's usually about the company. You know, who is your company? What do you guys do? There's typically a welcome there, a vision, and a mission of that company. What services do you provide? What is the goal, of your organization? That's usually that first section. I call that the warm and friendly session. Because you're welcoming the person to that document, which that document is a representation of your organization. And then the section two is typically your employment relationship. So, your relationship with this employee. And typically, those items, now I don't have everything here, but these are some suggestions, right? But EEO, non discrimination policies, non harassment policies, drug testing, okay, things of that nature. And then there's going to be typically an employment uh, employee. There's typically a standards of conduct portion, right? So the first part was the employment relationship, if you will. I guess that's what I'll call it. The third one is more what are those policies? What are those employment policies? That's how I'm gonna, that's how I'm gonna go ahead and identify the two. One would be an employment relationship. The third would be employment policies, right? So this is more where you're talking about attendance, standards of conduct, progressive disciplinary action may be defined here. Okay. What are those code of conduct? What does that look like? How do I get paid? How do we record keep? How do I clock in and out? What are my deadlines associated with clocking in and out? What does my pay periods look like? What does overtime look like? So, see, that's where some of those policies would be spelled out. Okay. Um, and then I want to call out here, this may be industry specific because, again, going back to my non medical home care agencies, you may want to have a section on standards of care. How are you properly um, transferring clients? How do you don gloves? How do you properly remove them? When are you wearing a mask the whole time you're at the client's home? So see, these are things that you would want in there. We talked about the nail salon earlier. So this is where you may want to throw in your sanitization process. What is that employee responsible for? Right? So that's what I mean by framework. Making sure you understand what are the things. I think for me, you guys know my lists. I listed out all the things that I was going to put into my policies and procedures. And slowly but surely, I started building those things out. That's what I mean by creating a framework. Okay. Okay. That is all I have on this topic. And so I want to make sure I don't have any questions. All right. So tomorrow, I'm very excited about tomorrow. A lot of you have asked me about the topic of business plans. How do you create business plans? What goes in them? All of the above. And so tomorrow we're going to be talking about business plans. I'm very excited. So I hope to see you tomorrow again at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard so that we can discuss business plans. But in terms of today, that is all I have for you guys. So have a beautiful day out there and stay blessed.